As ever, same agenda as always. We are going to talk about all the news, and yes, there will be a recording available afterwards at yoast.com/webinar. Yes, some brief housekeeping. All of this is the stuff we'll talk about, and of course, because seemingly there's nothing else to talk about, there's a whole bunch of AI stuff in here as well, unavoidably. But the real meat of today I want to get to is getting through the news and talking with Nick about Edge SEO and working out what the heck that is and what we should be doing about. Okay, so first, if you want to learn more about any of today's topics, this is the green button at the bottom. Everything that we're going to talk through, there's links, there's original sources, there's articles you can go and read yourself if you want to learn more, so don't worry if this is a bit too fast. Also, if you find that we're talking about things that you have no clue what we're on about, and we're using acronyms like SEO and CRO and I don't know, other stuff, go check out Yoast SEO Academy. It's got really good grounding in the basics. You can get up to speed and then follow along afterwards. Really nice. Last advert, I think, if you hadn't already come across this, it is nearly time for the year's best SEO conference. I say best because look at some of these awesome speakers. Though I noticed we had a version of this slide that had me on, and they've changed that out for other better looking, more qualified people. So YoastCon is our SEO conference. Very exciting in May in Nijmegen, which is in the Netherlands. Do come along. It's a one-day event, jam-packed full of awesomeness and SEO learnings and some rockstar speakers. That's going to be really cool. Okay, right. Some Google news. Yeah, let's talk through this and see what we think. So I think one of the oldest tools, one of the first tools that I certainly came across and many others do in kind of SEO career when you start looking at how do I understand what's happening was Google Trends. And it felt like it hadn't really been touched for probably about all 25 of your 25 years, right, Nick? But now it's had a big overhaul. Really nice.
That's really good. That needed to be done, really, didn't it? I was using the Glimpse plugin, giving a little push, but yeah, that gave me the trend on here. You know, that was. So I'm really happy they've done that.
Yeah, that's really cool. If you haven't played with this, it's really useful for kind of understanding broad market trends, emerging trends, geographical breakdowns, what's growing, what's shrinking, it's a slightly different thing from like conventional SEO keyword research. You're not going, okay, this keyword gets 500 searches and this one gets 800. You're going, how is the market changing and where is demand rising and falling? And that can tell you a lot about things like where should your long-term strategy be going and what should you be doing tactically tomorrow. So it's a real goldmine of user behavior and intent. But I still feel like understanding what are people typing into the search box is probably the closest we ever get to real psychology and understanding of what people want. So yeah, really nice. Go play. Also, this one I'm on the fence about. So I think this was announced late last year, but never really seemed to have landed. But now it seems to be here, at least in the US and going out elsewhere. You can now save your favorite brands in the search results, which then presumably does some kind of filtering and preferential rankings and stuff. I don't know, that feels quite useful for brands I know I'm going to rely on for stuff, but do I really want to be reinforcing my filter bubble? Surely I want diversity. Like, I want other talk brands, right? Not just the one that I've accidentally founded with the wrong name.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I sort of feel the same as you, Johnny, about this. I think you might just reinforce your search results already. Do we need them to be more large brand heavy? I mean, I love this from my client perspective, but
yeah, it already feels like two thoughts. One is the search results are already dominated by big brands. We've got some research on that later. So you really want to let the little brands cut through and disrupt. The other is, what is a brand in this context? Like, there are lots of brands that are parents and children of other brands, and they're all into that gets a bit weird, complicated. Okay, we'll see. Hopefully this is either really useful or it goes away. We shall see. There's so many things in Google. Not too much practical stuff here, but I really wanted to call this out because it made me smile. So Google's, where do I start? Unless you've been under a rock, you will have, and you've seen some of these before, you will notice that we talked a lot about structured data and schema.org, and it's a big part of what the Yoast SEO plugins do. We build a big complex relationship of all the things on the page and in the content, and we tell that to Google. Really nice. We've been ahead of the game for quite a while on that technically and in terms of the approach, and Google are starting to catch up, and now their documentation is saying, oh yeah, actually, this is the way you should do it. And it's much more important that you define the relationships between these things than just like list them. So quite nice to see that validation.
I always thought this was super important. I remember I watched so many of the webinars that you've done, Jono, on this, and it's it just seems to make so much sense. You connect those together. I do wonder, because everyone's now leaning. I'm never going to go heavily into AI, but everyone's leaning now on AI to produce their schema, and I wonder, how well AI is going to be doing in terms of nested structured data. I was quite interested to see that.
Yeah, especially when you consider them, and you've got an adversarial AI on Google side reading that schema and then trying to building it badly and then consuming it badly, and you're going to lose a whole bunch of the detail in the middle. And I think the reason why this approach is so important is that if we say the role of schema and structured data is to specifically and clearly communicate with Google, you lose that specificity and clarity. What are you doing? It's no different from just hoping that they understand your page. You really want to control that narrative. So yeah, I think AI generated schema is not the future. But we shall see. I might be wrong. Thinking of AI, look, we're already there. We've got rid of everything that's not AI this week. And you thought last month was just AI. This month is even more. Google Bard is a thing, right?
But everyone's disappointed in this. Don't you find?
Universally
disappointed.
Yeah. Everyone's played with this, and they all go, it is not as good as the other stuff. And Google are kind of almost apologetic about that, right? They're like, this isn't meant to replace search. It's an experiment. Oh, it's okay. This feels like they're behind, right?
It does feel like they're behind. I think OpenAI have really stolen the march on them on this, and they're already talking about GPT-5 being released in December. That's reaching sort of unsurpassed levels of near artificial intelligence. So it really does feel like Google is behind on this, and I think they're going to get. It's not going to be. I said it's going to be an annus horribilis, I think, as Queen Elizabeth would say in the UK for Google this year. I think together with the GA, what's happening around analytics, and also the pressure from the world on them as not seeing them in a tech leadership position when it comes to this kind of AI that has so much publicity around it.
Yeah, this feels like a desperate attempt to remain relevant whilst everyone else is scooting ahead. It may evolve into something else. I think the gap is quite wide, though. We look at some of the Bing stuff last time, and we'll look at it in a minute. The differences are so wide. Things like this still doesn't do a good job of source citation, which I think is critical when you know that these systems aren't going to be reliable or accurate. They're going to make mistakes. You're going to need to have a way of interrogating it and validating stuff. So yeah, pretty bad. Oh well. And yeah, this was really fun. So a slight sidestep, but if you missed this, it's well worth going and looking at the article. So The Verge, who are a brand who review tech and other stuff, used AI-generated content to write an article about the best printer in 2023. Why this is interesting is they understand SEO well enough to play the game, and they had quite a shallow article saying like, just buy this printer, it's the one everyone uses, and then a mountain of AI generated content in order to kind of fill the word counts up and cross the line. And it ranked really well. And this does point to some of the challenges, right, about how Google's ecosystem is handling this. But the narrative that was missed, I think, on this is they cheated a little bit. This story broke quite early on Reddit and other places. They got a bunch of links and content and publication links and attention and citations from it, and then maybe that's what made it rank. But I think the moral of the story here is there is opportunity around this, and you can game it a little bit, and you should definitely play and explore.
This is what I've been seeing around this, Jono, that there's obviously a huge temptation in ChatGPT for people to kind of reach the nirvana of setting up magical sites that scale infinitely without a huge team behind them.
Yes.
And they're all kind of failing quite quickly. And then people are saying, okay, AI text is very dangerous. We can't, Google's obviously targeting AI text. A lot of these sites are getting knocked out the listings fairly quickly. But I don't think that's really how it's going to work with brand sites, because all of these new sites are new. They haven't got the links, they haven't got the authority, they haven't got the trust. And I think it's a completely different scenario when The Verge uses GPT output versus when a brand new affiliate site goes out or tries to scale up. And then a huge part of this has to be trust from Google. Google knows that AI text is going to be a huge part of how websites are created. If you think about e-commerce sites, I mean, why would we get text created for PLP level pages? Yeah. Why would we get manually written meta description? I mean, use templates, of course, but why would we create these little blobs of text that have, that you really wouldn't want a writer on? It's not very high level work. And if the brands aren't using, if the brands aren't using their own model, of AI to create their own branded form of text that goes on their sites, then you're guaranteed that the outsourced companies that they're getting the text from are definitely doing it. So it's kind of a no-win situation. They kind of have to accept that this is a way that this kind of text is going to be written.
Yeah, and anything that's not editorial thought leadership, right? Anything where you're just like, I've got 1,000 meta descriptions or 1,000 product descriptions, people are going to cut corners on that, rightly or wrongly, and they're probably not going to give it as much editorial oversight as they should, and it's going to fill up Google, and then it's on Google to work out how do they rank and manage that.
But how much editorial oversight is there for PLP pages across large e-commerce sites? I mean, and to be fair to AI content, I played a lot with AI generated content, and grammatically it's great. It's like where it's gone wrong has been on the topic. It's kind of veered off wildly off topic, and that is a quality thing. But in terms of the if you keep it on topic, the grammar, the spelling, punctuation is all brilliant. So it's not necessarily. And I think we're just going to a new age where instead of writers, everyone who was writing have a number of people who become copy editors.
Yes.
And those people then become quality control copy editors. You have experts now checking the text because they have the ability to generate text very, very fast, and then that needs to go, then having been sense checked there, it then goes to copywriters, to copy editors to correct this. But it's something Google has to accept. So I wasn't so surprised really at the output of this experiment.
Yeah, it was only a matter of time, right? Nice. Okay, that's all the Google stuff. Let's do a bit of Bing stuff. Everybody's second favorite search engine. Is it your second favorite? I think we do this with most guests. Where does it rank in your list of favorite search engines?
List of all search engines. Well, that's a slightly awkward one with current affairs that have been going on recently at global level. But yeah, I would have said certain sort of Russian search engines would have been my favorite second choice.
Interesting, following the big Yandex leak. Certainly interesting to go back and revisit that at some point. I wonder what people have dug up in. Yeah, if you missed this like about a month or two ago, there was a huge Yandex leak which involved a ton of their source code, and the SEO industry went wild looking for kind of hidden gems and Easter eggs. And it turns out that really it boiled down to have a great website and get some links and build a brand. But maybe given a bit of time, people might have found some new ones.
I thought that the funny bit though was when people were applying that to Google, which was outrageous.
Yeah, not quite the same thing, right? So some Bing stuff. Again, this is more AI. This is Bing very much racing to kind of what feels like transform the search and the search results experience into something more multimedia, more chat orientated. Is that a fad? Is chat the way I want to interact with a search engine, or is this the future, or is this just a gimmick?
I think it's a bit of a gimmick, really, but it's a clever gimmick, and what Bing needs is a seismic change really to shake up the market. We've been in the search industry long enough to see that these market share numbers aren't changing really at all. Yeah. And so they need to do something big, and I think they put a big bet here on AI. And it's going to be incredibly expensive for them as well. I think computationally, introducing all this AI, and this was Google's reluctance, I think, is to introduce this huge amount of cost into all these heavy computational queries within their search engine. And so
it's like 100 times more expensive to serve a chat response than a conventional response.
And that goes against the zeitgeist at the moment is to reduce those costs, because of we've had the comeback on Bitcoin, where we've realized that we're burning how many billion metric tons of carbon just creating a fake currency. And then we're basically doing the same thing really in terms of all our computational work. So whether that's sort of search, or it's bots crawling, and I know Yoast have released something today which goes along those sort of lines, which you could talk about. But there is actually a sort of move to reduce this wasted computational resource that we're doing globally.
Yes. Yeah, and that's only going to get worse, right? The sheer scale. I saw something last week where, was it Amazon? Either Amazon or Google are planning to start building data centers on the moon, because that's cheaper than all the cooling you have to do with your undersea data centers. Like, at some point, somebody ought to ask questions about the kind of cost-benefit trade-off.
Well, I remember speaking to a group of DevOps people, and they're basically explaining that we didn't have, usually with backup, you need to have backup in different locations, and we don't actually have any kind of off-planet backup. So I I think from that perspective, maybe it makes sense that we do save something on the moon.
Well, meanwhile, in completely impractical and I think potentially wasteful applications, you can now create images in Bing Chat. So when you Google living room furniture ideas, you can now generate like mock-ups of layouts and color schemes, which, yeah, gimmick. But again, this maybe that's useful in some scenarios, but it doesn't feel like the way I want to search. Maybe some very narrow categories of kind of search journeys, but this isn't the primary way I want to interact with a search engine for sure. Maybe I'm just old.
I'm still holding out for voice assistants, really.
Yeah.
You know that I'm a big proponent of that. But I remember when this all, we were getting very excited around Alexa and Siri, and the technology hasn't advanced as much as anybody wanted, and I think everyone who's in that space has acknowledged that. It's we lacked kind of conversational search or advanced search, query search, and I think there's a real opportunity now with this AI to kind of revitalize that whole area, and that's what I want. I need search, but I also need an assistant, and I think when it becomes more proactive, I'm going to have more useful things happening for me because I can delegate tasks or carry out simple actions, multi-stage actions, using probably whether it's a typed interface or whether it's a sort of voice interface.
Yep, agreed. That's the future. Yeah, more. So much AI stuff. We'll skip over some of this because it's the same narrative. But yeah, there's now Microsoft as well as Bing, same entity, same parent company, have put a bunch of AI stuff into the 365 suite, which feels very much like Clippy has come back from the grave to help you write your resignation letter or your application or whatever. So yeah, this is in theory going to span across all of their ecosystem. Google are doing similar stuff. There is an arms race here to go, how do we put AI in all the things, which feels like some of that might be a distraction. However, one thing that Bing are innovated on, which Google has really fallen behind on, is actually giving some metrics and insight to this, which I think is quite useful. So this is not there yet, but they've announced it. So you will get metrics on how are people using this and how is that impacting our rankings and our click-throughs, etc. I did also see that your analytics system, whether that's Google Analytics or something else, can pick up on clicks from Bing AI chat interactions as a different source from Bing search. So you can start to put some business metrics on this and quantify it. Maybe that will make it a thing. Maybe that's the bit that Google missed, was making this measurable.
It's hard to say. I mean, we asked for a lot of this around voice as well, and I think the reason they didn't do it was because the numbers were so low that you can produce metrics that show that nothing's really happening, so therefore no one invests in it. So the voice approach was to kind of hide all the metrics on the hope that people would heavily invest in it on the proviso that it would be big. I prefer Bing's approach. I'd rather have the numbers.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, some WordPress news. Everybody's favorite content management system. Maybe that's our jingle. I was saying in the chat earlier we need a jingle. There it is. We'll get our team to no. That's okay.
ChatGPT jingle creator, which I think is probably come out by the time we finish this webinar.
Yeah. So WordPress 6.2 is launching. Is that today? 28th of March. That is today. That's exciting. I didn't realize that was today. I thought that was a week or two off. Loads of new stuff, which we don't have time to go into in detail, but there will be a big old blog post on Yoast.com covering all this in detail. There's some improvements to the writing experience, etc. Loads of block editor stuff as ever. Quite a nice upgrade to how you interact with the block finder and some draggy droppy stuff, which all look quite nice. The big thing was Openverse, which is open source royalty-free images that you can just search for and then use, which is pretty cool, all as like a native seamless experience. And a bunch of other performance stuff behind the scenes, which is awesome. That is apparently coming today. Go and check that out. Related performance, a bunch of the Yoast team went to Cloudfest recently, which is a big tech conference in Germany held at a theme park. Why wasn't I invited? And there was a big WordPress hack day where a bunch of teams competed to do like proof of concepts for new ideas and projects. We won, I think, 3 awards, including like the Future of the Web Award for our team working on the Eco Mode plugin, which is really cool, which pretty simple concept. It runs in the background and keeps an eye on all the times that your WordPress site is connecting to other things on the internet, whether that's like looking for plugin updates or sending telemetry back to WordPress.org and any of those types of things. And when you track all of that, you can go, we should do less of this, we should reduce the frequency of this. And all of these things take electricity, carbon, server resources. We can turn all that down. Very nice. I've just gone back a slide instead of forward a slide. Okay, social media news, where we pretend that we know anything about what the kids are doing. Meta, which is the brand that was Facebook, is apparently developing a decentralized Twitter alternative. If you caught this webinar last month, we had Alex Moss on talking about what on earth does decentralized mean and what is Web3. That was very good. I'm still not sure I know, but it was fun regardless. Yeah, Meta are building something to compete with Twitter that isn't owned by one company, that doesn't live in one place, that you can run your own servers of, etc., etc. Something open source, maybe a good idea, but Meta don't have a track record for doing things that aren't evil. We'll see.
Yeah, they don't. But I mean, you need something else. I think SEO Twitter has suffered badly. Mastodon is great, and I love the decentralized nature of it. But there's two big problems with that. The first is that if your server that you belong to is somehow turned off or decommissioned, you lose your social profile. And the second thing is that the investment is wild in it, and you're putting a lot of pressure on individuals to scale up their server resource to handle this kind of traffic. And if we're being realistic, we need companies like Meta funding this, really, or it wouldn't be possible.
Agreed. I think we've covered this a few times, I think, but the premise I keep coming back to was the reason that Twitter failed commercially and at scale was it just didn't get critical mass of enough users to monetize it, to find roles, etc. Not enough people engaged, just not enough people. And Mastodon is a fraction of that, so it's going to struggle. So maybe Meta is big enough to go, we'll throw all the people, all the resources, all the marketing at it. Maybe it becomes a competitor. That said, they still seem to be doing bizarre things with verification and chasing Twitter, and they launched the verification thing recently. It was like $15 a month, which feels absurdly expensive to me. And the unwritten reward of that was you got a bunch more reach on your posts. You now explicitly do not get more reach on your posts, so they've killed whatever advantage might have existed there. Really weird, very strange. I don't really understand the incentives other than the ego of having a blue tick or whatever. I don't even know what their equivalent is. Thinking of blue ticks and bizarre strategies, Elon Musk is shaking up Twitter some more. So March 31st, which is 3 days from now, they are going to open source the discovery algorithm of Twitter. I'm on the fence about this. I think this, on the surface, this sounds like a great idea. We go, one of the big problems in modern society is misinformation and the weaponization of social media, etc. What happens if we just make all of that transparent and we bring everybody in, we open it up, we say, let's work on this together, let's do it collectively, let's improve it, let's iterate, really nice. However, I can't also help but think Elon Musk's grand plans for making a lot of money out of Twitter aren't going well. And maybe this is just him outsourcing his work to all of us. Maybe.
I think he's just keeps trying things at the moment.
That way, this way, that way.
This way, that way. I don't have a lot of faith really in what's happening to Twitter.
Well, thinking of a lack of faith, especially when today, thank you, Sabrina, in our social media team for spotting this. Today, he also announced that the discovery feed, the For You bit that is your native homepage, will only show verified accounts. So, let's open source all of the discovery, but then let's limit the people and the brands you can interact with to the ones who are willing to pay, which feels a little bit pay to play. It feels a little bit like that might just reinforce the echo chambers that we don't necessarily think are very healthy for society. This is messy.
I think it's just everything he's trying to get those numbers up, and I've seen the most. I mean, what was the one we had last week? If you've got a verified account, then you have to pay to get it verified by the end of March or something, or you won't be verified. But that's a very strange logic to that. That's sort of saying, like, you got a blue tick, pay to get the blue tick. If you don't get it, you can pay to get it any other time in the future, exactly the same amount of money. It's a strange proposition.
It is, and I keep bouncing between, okay, Twitter's not very important, it's quite small, it's a tech bubble. Then I go, also, it's quite influential in the tech bubble and on society, so we maybe ought to get this right. Don't know.
It is still. I think we're all kind of hoping for post-Elon.
Oh, sorry, I lost you there for a second.
No, go on. Yeah, I was saying we're just hoping for that post-Elon era for Twitter. We don't want to give up our accounts, do we, Jono? So, yeah.
Yeah. So we touched on earlier big brands dominating search. There was some really interesting research, I think, from SEMrush Or maybe using so much data. I'm not sure. I was badly done out there. Glenn Alsop from Detailed. A bunch of research saying across all the biggest search terms and all the industries, where is all this traffic going? And when you look at all the companies and the websites that rank, and then you look at which companies own those companies, and you add it all up to the parent companies, you see that there are 16 that get a disproportionate share of all search traffic. And this kind of makes sense. A lot of this are big news brands, they're big entertainment brands. But it really does show you kind of the power of brand in SEO, that when you've got those big domains and that authority and real world authority, it becomes much easier to compete in SEO because you can leverage that. I guess the nice flip side of this isn't doom and gloom. This isn't we can't compete and all these big brands have eaten the pie. The flip side is there's still a huge amount of opportunity here to do things that these big brands can't. If these are companies that own companies that own companies that have tens of thousands of employees, they are slow. They are on old technology. They aren't interested in disrupting and changing and challenging norms and having opinions. All of these are things that smaller, more agile businesses can do. And there is just as much traffic in those areas and niches. So, yeah, interesting. Oh gosh, more AI stuff. So yeah, if you've not played with it yet, GPT-4 is out, which is the latest iteration, maybe not even the latest, which does a whole bunch of smarter things on conversational search, on identifying images. Go and interact with this. I think what was really interesting about this that I did want to highlight was this. I think this might be the moment where everything changes. Not quite Singularity and Terminator, but one of the big limitations of all of these tools and all of these large language models and systems is they were trained on legacy data. They get a lot of stuff wrong. They can't communicate with the outside world. They can't look at new information. They can't go to Google search results and check the weather. None of those things. And now suddenly they can. Now people can write plugins that allow them to connect to external services, like what is the weather going to be like tomorrow? And it can generate you a paragraph in response and go check a third-party API. This feels huge, right?
Absolutely massive, Jono. Yeah, I see this as a huge turning point. I mean, if we can connect to these different services. Can you hear me, Jono? Yeah.
Got you.
If we can connect to these other services, it just opens up the world in terms of, you can ask Chat GPT or ask the AI to kind of book you a table at a restaurant. You can think about connecting up your site and creating personal shopper experiences. I think we're going to see a whole load of those getting launched over the next few months. So yeah, it's really, as Hans Christian says, we're letting AI reach out the box, which is extremely risky, and I think we are maybe doing this a little carelessly, but let's I think we're kind of in the let's see what happens phase really with AI. But yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting, and I think the speed of it is really this year. So this year we're going to see so many things get developed. This is incredibly rapid, and once you can connect up services or websites, it's going to change the game.
And bringing it back to SEO just very briefly, I think the thing that this does is just commoditizes all of the things. If you look at that example in the image, I want the restaurant suggestion, I want the recipe, I want the calorie counts, I want to get the ingredients. These are conventionally spaces where I would have a website with web pages, with 500 words of content, where I'm trying to compete for those searches. Those searches no longer happen. This is not how people are researching and interacting. Systems will be consuming data from maybe structured data or schema.org to fill these kinds of requests. But it means that we need to, as SEOs, trying to go, how do I access and build an audience? How do I gain customers? We can't be competing on commodity facts and information. We have to be competing on brand, on differentiation, on added value, on opinion, on expertise, on all the things that, hey, Google have been saying we should be doing for a decade. The days of like, I need to write a landing page with 500 words of content to rank for this specific keyword, going to get harder and harder. It's got to be more about how do I build a relationship.
It will, and I think it comes back to everything you've been talking about with connected structured data. But how do we get that? How do we get that data into these systems? Because it needs to be understood, and so many large brands struggle so hard with adding any content at all to their pages.
We will come on to how they fix that in a minute.
Where do we exactly? That's a good solution for it. But how do you, without this content even being there, how can it even get into this process? So, are we kind of getting into this age of kind of AI search making as an SEO? We're going to make our clients more visible in these workflows.
Yeah, and that kind of structured data and connected web thing is hard, right? Potentially one part of the solution is Mozilla, who are behind Firefox, big part of the open web, big part of web standards and browser standards, have announced Mozilla.ai and a whole bunch of money to try and go, how do we regulate and influence and manage this ecosystem? I will be watching this very closely. I don't think they'll have any answers, but they will at least be asking the questions. So yeah, that should be fun. Okay, very briefly, because I know everyone's ready to talk about Edge. Very briefly, some new stuff in Yoast SEO. Today, we launched our crawl optimization toolkit in Yoast SEO free. Previously, this was in beta in the premium plugin, but now it's out there in the world because we think this is super important. Essentially, it's a whole bunch of options that let you go and turn off bits of your WordPress website that you're not using or that shouldn't exist in the first place because WordPress is quite old and ships with a bunch of stuff that maybe you don't need. And maybe Google spends a lot of time crawling and getting stuck in and wasting resources in when it probably shouldn't. Turning those things off removes those dead ends, prevents Google from wasting, and Bing and Yahoo and all these others, prevents them wasting resources on exploring those dead ends. And that saves carbon and electricity because every one of those, every time your website gets crawled, every time Google visits, that costs electricity. That means there's a server running somewhere, there's a power plant powering that, carbon is being burnt on the trees, solar panels, whatever. All of those things come with a cost. And every time you, every one of these toggles that you turn off, you're reducing that consumption. So this is huge, like 13 million, 14 million nearly websites. Even if just a few of those go in and turn off some of these dead ends, we save trees. I think that's super exciting, really, really cool. Some of the smaller bits, if you're using the Yoast SEO FAQ and how-to blocks, which are packed full of schema, we now apply our content highlighting and analysis to those. That's pretty cool. So you can go make sure they're readable and accessible, etc. And if you are into Portuguese, then we've shipped a whole bunch of improvements to some of our analysis there. Very nice. One brief bit of housekeeping administrative stuff. Sad to announce that Thijs de Valk, our CEO, has decided to step down and go pursue other things. Not sad to announce, just an announcement. He's going to go and do things that he will be nice and happy with in the future. He's not dead. Everything's fine. We are on the lookout for a new business leader if you fancy applying to sit at the helm of Yoast. Why not? Nick, you're not doing anything important, are you?
I've got so much free time, Jono.
Excellent. Okay, we'll sign you up. Cool. And then lastly, if you've enjoyed this, we're not even finished yet, we're halfway through, but if you are enjoying this, come back next month and we'll talk with Lily Ray about algorithm updates and how you interpret and survive and recover from and understand and extract value and insight from what happens when Google says there has been a big update and everybody's position shift. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's unshare my screen if I can only work out how. Share screen, close. No, there we go. Is that just, there we go, we're back. Right. Shall we chat about Edge SEO?
Shit, yeah. Because there's already a movement in the chat to push you for CEO. So we've got to swiftly move on to the topic of the day.
Shoot it down. No. I'm quite happy just doing whatever this thing is. Okay, so Edge. Let's start off with some definitions because this is new alien territory, right? In the most basic possible terms, what is Edge? And if I skip ahead a little bit, how is that different from the cloud, which is maybe something that people are more familiar with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the way I like to explain it is we all generally aware of CDNs, content delivery networks. And the main CDNs out there, we know about Cloudflare. There's also, Akamai, it's one of the big ones for enterprise, Fastly, and we got CloudFront as well for the Amazon-owned CDN. There's a bunch of, Vercel and a few very small and more niche CDNs. But so the CDNs have been around for a very long time, and their purpose was to serve content. So if I was accessing your website from, let's say Mumbai, and your servers were in California, then I had a sort of effectively sort of internally cached version that sped up the process and meant I could access that content much better and it'd be a much better experience really for that user. They wouldn't have to go and request these pages from the origin. And we use the word origin a lot to refer to where the material is hosted from. Now, with everything computers, it got more advanced, and you can sort of say Moore's law, etc. Everything gets better, everything has more capacity, everything has more power. And that meant over time, we don't just serve content through a CDN, we can process scripts, and we can process JavaScript on the edge, and we can also have storage, data storage, I think it's something we'll talk about later, within the edge. Now, that's basically created this sort of era now we have of edge compute. When we're talking about edge, we're kind of talking at like the edge of that network where the user interacts with that network. So, the edge is far wider than your perimeter than your origin server, and that's kind of what we call the edge. It's been somewhat confused with Microsoft choosing to name their browser that as well, and I have had several presentations where I've realized halfway through that they do actually think that I'm referring to Microsoft's browser.
Oh, that's excellent.
So that has confused things, but this is kind of what we call edge, and so this is the edge, and edge compute is what we do in the edge or at the edge.
Okay, let me replay that just so we're all on the same page. Once upon a time, you would host your website on a physical computer, maybe in your office. And then we go cloud, and we go, okay, I have a physical computer over here, and I have a physical computer in Australia. And we store a copy of the website in both, and then it's faster for people there. And then we go, okay, actually, what if we use a network of computers that there's one in every city in the world, and we store a copy of our website there, and then it's super fast. And then this next bit, which is the super interesting bit, I think, is you go, let's not just store our stuff there, let's run logic there. And then we can do stuff based on which one is this running on, where is the user, what time of day is it, should this behave differently. We can do arbitrary stuff. We can run scripts and systems and websites and software and databases like up the street from the user rather than wherever my server happens to be.
Exactly that, Jono. And we call these servers POPs, that's what we refer to in Edge, and it's a point of presence. So you'll hear a lot of CDNs talk about POPs around the world, how many POPs they have, and Akamai has many. Tens of thousands, etc., of these POPs. So that's exactly it. And then you ask kind of what's the difference between cloud computing and edge, which is a very interesting, because both they're not both in the cloud, and I guess to some extent they are. There's a network of POPs, the network within the CDN. I know that normally would say some of the differences are around the response. So if you're doing things in the edge network, you're doing edge compute, you're generally doing things that are you're intercepting the requests. You're doing things that are very time sensitive, affecting the individual request very, very fast. Usually with cloud computing, you wouldn't be doing that kind of very fast request type operation. You'd be, and so that's generally the difference. But I think for me, the bigger difference I've kind of learned is that the kind of changes or the data that you would store in the edge is very lightweight. So we would be talking about, let's say, a redirection in the edge. We'd be storing key value pairs, which is what we refer to, to a set of values. And for a redirect, that would obviously be the incoming request, and then the request that you want to direct to. And you'd be keeping this kind of lightweight data. So that's 2 URLs, and it's very, so you're not storing video files or very large, very large things in the edge. You're storing kind of maybe blob of schema or a set of rules or a set of a bit of JavaScript or like I say, redirection logic. It's very lightweight data that you're storing in the edge, and that's kind of reflected in the kind of storage that we have in Edge. It's very fast, very lightweight. It can store a lot of these. I think when I first started working with Akamai, we were using kind of more policy files, and a policy file is a kind of extended form of their configuration, a kind of abstraction of their configuration, and we could store, say, 5,000 different one-to-one redirects within a policy file, which sounds great, and that's fantastic as compared to doing this on your load, on your origin or on your load balancer. That's brilliant, because
I think
that's big numbers.
Most sensible, right? Well, there's many sensible, but redirects really make sense. Like, so
it does. Yeah.
If a user's going to request my website, and then that request has to go all the way to where my server is. The server has to boot up WordPress. WordPress has to go, what do you want to do with this? Oh, it's a redirect. Send them over there. Like, that's a whole bounce across the world.
It's ping-ponging. It's ping-ponging back and forth. And this makes absolutely no sense. If you, exactly as you say, you've got a redirect. You come in from the edge. We come into the origin. We then find out where we're meant to be, what the origin does the redirection. It can then ping-pong us out back and forth through the CDN network, because these are public URLs. So you're not getting ping-ponged internally, you're getting ping-ponged back through the CDN layer. It makes so much more sense the minute that a user touches the edge to redirect them immediately to the end destination. And this wasn't actually something that I think when we first started looking at this, we looked at this from an SEO point of view because we wanted to manage redirects, and redirect management is a whole topic within SEO. We love our links. We want to flatten redirect chains. We want to deal with link rot. So when links are going to the wrong place, how do we have them in? How do we have that link corpus in one place that we can manage effectively? So the Edge was kind of the solution really for redirects in that sense. But then we discovered these performance benefits, and certainly missing out, even this first hop, let alone a chain redirect, gave us reductions of circa 50%. It was brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. That's super complex. Like way in the deep end. What's the easiest thing people could do to get started with taking advantage of this today? And I think you mentioned Cloudflare in passing. I suspect that might be part of the answer.
I did, and yeah, I kind of mentioned the main CDNs that are available. And obviously, if you're going to get into Edge, you have to be playing in the CDN environments that are available. So it's very, very hard to get into Akamai. There isn't a sort of developer part or version of Akamai, so it's very, very hard to get into Akamai. The two most accessible ones are Cloudflare and Fastly, I would say. Both of them are brilliant for edge compute. They have very active developer sections. They give you, I'm pretty sure Cloudflare give you quite a lot of test credits and stuff to learn this with. So yeah, I'd say there is so much documentation on both those platforms. I think dev.fastly.com for the Fastly one, and I think it's pretty similar for Cloudflare. I need to go and check that. But yeah, both of them are very, very friendly for edge development, and so I'd say this is where you start really. And I think people have started to get into having a CDN, and Cloudflare is kind of the one that most people go to because it's free, and it's easy to pick up Cloudflare. But I would sort of recommend to people to go and have a look at Fastly as well. That's very accessible.
Nice. Always good to have two options, right? I think one of the other main use cases we see is SEO A/B testing. That's quite a big deal, right? Do you want to talk a bit about how that works?
Yeah, I think the Edge is the perfect place for A/B testing, and the reason for that is, and when we're saying about A/B testing, normally if we were using a kind of a normal A/B test, we're doing it for users. So maybe we change 10% of the traffic or something because we're doing a user test. We're not really talking about SEO tests. If we're talking about SEO tests, we're not really talking about A/B. We're talking about before and after testing really. And what we need is to change all of the requests. We don't want to change 10%. We want to change 100% because we want it to apply to users and Google and bots and everything. So it's a good place to do this kind of A/B testing within the Edge because of the capacity that you have within Edge to run these kind of tests. And I've run tests that scale up to 40 million requests per month. That's quite normal. That's not a large number for Edge. So the cost is very good within Edge, and that allows you to do the kind of this higher capacity to actually change, for example, like a menu across your entire website for all your traffic for a month. And I don't think that's really as available through any of the normal kind of methods for A/B testing, which are more directed towards user testing. I'd say a couple of things as well. There's certain providers like Optimizely that obviously people would be very aware of that are beginning to interact and work through Edge. So they're using their logic, but they're working into Edge. And I'd say the second thing is that the reason they're doing that is because they understand that being able to serve different versions at the edge, at the point you reach the edge, as we discussed, where you touch the edge, you get version A or version B or version C. That's very quick, and you haven't got JavaScript then running that could affect your results. So it's a much fairer way of delivering the end destination, as we did with redirects, the end destination for the different tests. So I think that's why they've focused quite a lot on Edge deployments, because it's just a much fairer and more efficient way of doing that kind of testing. But I run a lot of pilots in Edge, and I think that's probably one of the best use cases is being able to have that flexibility to run a pilot and follow this test and learn approach.
I like that. That was going to be my next question, is how you can use that to step ahead, right? So you go, we want to change this template, or we want to change, I don't know, something simple. We want to change all of our links green, but we know that's going to take development time and resource, and we can't schedule it in for 3 months, and it's going to be quite expensive. What if we did a proof of concept on the edge by using either Cloudflare or Fastly, whatever, to intercept those requests, to make those changes on the edge and serve it to those users? maybe as part of an A/B test, maybe you just do it and change it and see what happens.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's the way. I think that's the way to use Edge. And there's two different types of Edge development. There's something else that I've learned, and I think it's kind of, you have Edge development that is going to be more long term and more of the architecture. So we've talked about the use case for redirects and forward rewrites. That makes sense to put on the Edge, and that makes sense to build your architecture around that to handle that.
Then there's also the hacking.
There's the hacking. Well, it is. Let's be honest. It's the hacking. Largely, that's what's summed up usually by Edge SEO, and I think this is probably my bugbear with Edge SEO, that it's seen as a way of bypassing difficult devs. Yes. And exactly, and I do appreciate that, and I we've all been in the situations where we're SEOs, we know what needs to be fixed, but how do we get it done? And this is kind of what drew me into Edge development, is because I wanted a way of running these pilots and getting things done. But the big caveat here with everything you do on the Edge is that it is very, very easy to move your tech debt onto the Edge. And if you move your tech debt onto the Edge, somebody at some point is going to have to deal with it, and you'll find that you lose the support within the business to be managing content through the Edge. So the way that I found to navigate my way out of this conundrum is to largely put my energy behind pilots, because if you focus entirely on a pilot, you can say that, to your point, we're going to change all the links green. Now, the business will like that because we're using technology that they're already using as part of it's trusted technology. The compliance security side is already happy with using this technology. We're not bringing in a third party. It's very quick for us to make these changes. And also, when we have a single page, it's not even one dev team, it can be multiple teams working on a single page. So that kind of level of coordination is very difficult to get. So if you can then change it at the request level, we could then change all of those links green within every module, within every part of that site. But what we would do at the whole point of this would be saying, okay, we're going to test it, we're going to change this for a month. If this works, then we have real world data, because we've had Google crawling it, we've had real world data, we've had user data, we've had performance data, and this then has to come back into the dev queue and be correctly prioritized. So this is a way of kind of running that test and learn to come up with hypotheses and be able to test those hypotheses in the wild in a way that's quite controlled.
Nice, perfect, good timing. Time for some Q&A.
Thanks, Nick, for explaining this. I think that was really helpful for people actually finding out what Edge can actually bring to SEO and how that works. Yeah, time for Q&A, because we do have a few questions. We have a question about Edge, so I think we should start with that one, Nick. The question is, I will put it on the screen. What's the most complex implementation that you've done with Edge? And
that I can talk about. So this is I mean, yeah, when I can change a request, so I can change any request, and that means that I can change the header of a request. So that can be a redirection or a forward rewrite, and I've changed these in the billions per month. So you can do that at scale. That's very complex. But what's more complex, or the most complex area of Edge at the moment, is making changes within the body of the HTML page. So if you imagine that you're unpacking the page as it passes in the stream, and so we're uncompressing it, we're making changes, maybe we're taking out a module, putting a new module, we're making a very large change on the page. You can literally change anything within a request. It's like a superpower. But with those changes becomes a lot of overheads in terms of performance, speed, because you're essentially intercepting those requests and manipulating them, and that creates a lot of challenges, especially at scale. So I'd say the easiest part of Edge work is header changes, redirections, forward rewrites. The harder work is when you get into full HTML injection, stitching together HTML, or full-on HTML page changes.
Cool. So that's the complexity added to those projects. Okay, cool. Thanks for answering that one. We do have two questions on structured data as well.
My favorite.
Yeah, maybe you already saw the first one, which is from David. Explain nested structured data.
Sure. Yeah, we skipped over that. We've done a lot of webinars on schema stuff, so I apologize for fast forwarding over that. I'll give you the fast version. If you want to do structured data and schema well, you need to describe all of the things that are on the page. So I have a recipe that's written by a person who works for the organization, who publishes the website that the web page, that the article, that the recipe is on. I think that makes sense.
That makes sense.
And it's not enough just to say there is a recipe, there is an article, there is an author. You need to describe the relationships between them. So you need to say this recipe was authored by this person and join those up. And you can start to do that by describing those relationships in a kind of nested structure. And
would you say nesting is kind of a hierarchy, adding hierarchy?
Yeah, hierarchy. Yeah. So you can go, this is a web page that contains an article that contains a recipe written by this person, etc. And defining those relationships is the key.
Yeah, and I think it's good if you remember, we talk about JSON LD, and the LD stands for linked data. So that's a hint. So yeah, I think it's those should be interacting with each other to get the meaning. Because as Jono said, it's the relationships between them that's as important as what you're describing. It's knowing that this recipe was written by this person, or having worked in telco before, this phone is made by Apple. This is their site. This is their manufacturer. This is it's that understanding that only comes from nesting it together.
Yeah.
So another addition to that is author metadata, and Johnny's asking in what regard the LinkedIn page is important for that data. And what should be on the profile?
I might answer it slightly strangely, or slightly differently. I guess author and person structured data is useful and interesting because you want to try and convince Google and other systems that the person writing this page is reputable and has expertise and is an authority on the topic and knows what they're talking about, etc., etc. And as part of doing that, you go, here's where they went to school, here's the awards they've won, here is their LinkedIn profile. So I guess the question is, what data should be on the author's LinkedIn profile is anything that demonstrates their authority. And maybe to turn that around, like, you can't really fake that, you can't cheat it. So it's not about what do I need to put on this page, it's about how do I create content that is demonstrably written by experts who are experts in their field, who I can prove that they know what they're talking about by pointing out their LinkedIn profile that shows a rich career history and a whole bunch of stuff they've published and awards they've won.
Yeah. So it should be a supporting part of all the metadata and not the starting point of your author profile. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, we have time for a few others. I really like the one with the most votes right now. Are keywords needed for SEO anymore?
Oh, interesting. Nick?
Oh, are they needed? Yes. Well, yes. I think at the moment they are. It's got more complex, hasn't it? So I think keyword research, when I first started out, was a pretty basic, thing. And we now have an idea of intent. We have an idea of clustering. We can do far more cleverer keyword research, but we're still using keywords. So I'm not prepared to say that we're not needing keywords anymore, because we need some sort of anchor to direct our activity towards some kind of search. Our role as SEOs is to link up users through their intent with our content, and if we take keywords out of that, it's going to be very hard for us to determine what their intent is or what they're trying to do. Yeah,
I think to add to that, Google's whole model of the web is still based on the idea that a web page is about a thing. And it's not strictly a keyword, it's a topic, an idea, a concept. And you could argue for hours whether a cat is the same thing as a kitten, and should that be one page or two page. Doesn't matter. We're stuck in a world where you have to write about a thing. And part of the way we anchor that, through nice phrasing, Nick, is to find and determine what are those keywords and topics and which pages do we attach those to.
Oh, I hope Miranda's question got answered.
I really like that top one because it's on point for Nick.
Okay. Let's do that.
I'm a well-known runner.
It's about 2 sites with almost the same name and content, probably. But
yeah. Nick, do you want to grab this
so,
one?
Yeah. How do you?
Let's just talk.
Oh, sorry. I see what you mean now. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So yeah, it's obviously so. Yeah, with the same branding, because it's like B covers fast running news but ranks higher. Well, yeah. So yeah, it's fast runners with the 1 N instead of fast runners with the 2 N's. So yeah, I mean, site B has better results because it has more authority. It's a better ranking site. It's got, we still live in a world where links matter in terms of you have two big aspects really in terms of ranking. You got your content that you have, how much content you have, and what, to Jono's terms, topics you're covering, and the authority you have across those topics, the breadth of content you have across those topics, and then you have the links that you have to push it up, and that's your general authority. So Site B has better results because Google thinks it's more relevant for that term. So your option really, I mean, we've all been stuck in that place, and we've had the owner sort of saying, well, how do I get above Wikipedia for my name or for my term? And it's this is just the age-old problem, isn't it? So I mean, all you can do is keep building authority on that. I like the idea of using schema for this, because if you're talking like if it's a brand name or a company name, you need to start building up Google's understanding of you as an entity. So, and you can find, and we actually talked when we first talked about the Google Trends tool in this webinar. And I love the Google Trends tool because it's the only tool that is completely free and doesn't require a Google login. So this is why it's everyone has this across the entire company. So any large company, everyone's using Google Trends. But I actually like using the search results like Jono, because if you go into the search results and you search for a term, you can very quickly see, does Google recognize that as a sort of entity? Does it see it as a brand name? Does it see it as a sort of transactional search? Does it see it, how does Google understand that term? And I think this is really where I start in a situation like this. If Google doesn't understand that as a brand term, then that's what you need to be working towards, because fastrunners.com has all the potential to own that brand term. So that's what you would be trying to increase. But that would be the sort of tactic behind it.
Cool. We got some new questions in, but we are a little bit short of time. So I will, for the person Chris asking the Yoast SEO questions, we will answer those in a comment on the questions themselves. But I think maybe the Bing question is nice to end with. Let me double check if there's an Edge question as well. Let's do that.
I can see that from Luce. That's a good question, Luce, and it is one that I get asked this a lot. So Edge does help larger sites because you're putting effort into it, aren't you? You're having to learn how to do something completely different. You're having to learn how to do Edge SEO, how to write scripts, interact with new platforms. You wouldn't necessarily do that for a small site because the ROI on that activity wouldn't make sense. I would say that it's best suited for larger websites, more enterprise websites, because that investment in time and effort and also the cost, this isn't free. The Cloudflare aren't doing this and Fastly aren't doing this as a charity endeavor. They will charge you for using this computational time within the Edge. So there needs to be a business case behind that, and usually that business case only makes sense for larger websites. But with the larger websites, if you can imagine, you have a CMS that doesn't work as you'd expect it, or you can't get the SEO value, you can be fixing things on the Edge, changing that entire response while you get that fixed on the origin underneath. And that has huge value for larger brands, because these are usually just sticking points where they just can't move ahead, and their time to get these kind of large structural problems fixed is immense. So it's all about ROI. So I'd say the ROI is clearly there for larger websites rather than your smaller ones, where you're probably better suited kind of fixing that on the origin or in WordPress or with Yoast.
Woohoo!
Oh, there you go. Good plug at the end there. Yep.
Nice. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, that was the last question because we're out of time and we have to make sure everybody knows which new speaker we have lined up for the next webinar in April. And that's Lily Ray. And I'm a little bit jealous at Taco because he gets to do that webinar. And I am a fan of Lily Ray. I saw her on stage at SMX in Munich. So I'll definitely watch. But Lily Ray will touch on a topic that we already briefly touched on. And that's the EAT. So the extra E in the authority, expertise, and
nice.
Trustworthiness.
She's a legend.
So, yeah, she's a legend. Come see that webinar. You can sign up through the green button that's already showing at the bottom of the screen right now. And she will share some winners and losers of Google algorithms updates as well. So stay tuned, or at least sign up if you want to know more about that. Lastly, Nick, thanks for joining us today. I think a whole bunch of people learned about Edge SEO. I learned a lot. I didn't know anything about this, and I think it's really, really interesting. So I hope the other ones watching have the same experience, and hope to see you soon.
An absolute pleasure. Yeah.
And Jono, thanks as well, as always.
Thank you. We'll see you all next time.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.